thank you for joining. First question I wanted to ask you was just to introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about your consultancy and the services that you provide.
Sure. So, I'm Ben Johnson, founder CEO of BML. We have three parts of the business now, which is BML Digital, which is digital transformation, technical architecture, digital strategy, program management, etc. We've recently launched BML.work, which is a recruitment company. We kind of pride ourselves on being a recruitment company who aren't recruiters, because we've all got technical backgrounds, not recruitment backgrounds, but that tries to differentiate us there. And we're just launching another piece of the business called BML.ventures, which is hyper focused on private equity deals and providing the technical support and due diligence around those. So that's everything from pre-deal due diligence through to carve-outs of businesses, TSA exit, interim IT management in those spaces as well. So a sort of broad range of services, all people-based, and we tend to work on an associate model as well, which means that we scale up and scale down on a regular basis. So.
And tell me a little bit about that transition, because obviously I know when we first started speaking, we were talking, we currently fund BML Digital.
Yeah.
Obviously with BML Recruitment and BML Ventures side of things is something that's kind of grown from the original business. Tell me
exactly.
Transition, how that came about, how did that come around?
Yeah, sure. So I think as many of my more stupid ideas happened, I was on holiday and had some time to think, and I think we realised that actually one of the things that we're really good at is building teams and building high performing teams and finding the right people to do that and meet the market needs. That was traditionally sort of phrased around my background, which is consultancy and technology and digital delivery, all of those things for some quite big companies. And I think I realized that actually what that really is a recruitment company to all intents and purposes. And we built a team of about 20 for a project that we landed, ramped that up very quickly, built a team of about 20 in a couple of weeks, literally, and got going on that. And I think it just highlighted to me that actually that there's a service there beyond someone buying into the whole consultancy piece, that at a more granular level that we can actually support on the recruitment side. And then on the other piece, on the private equity side, we've just ended up involved in loads of deals. And we've worked with 6 private equity companies now. We've got loads of reference sites there, and so it just made sense really to package that as a very discreet, bespoke offering to private equity organizations in language that they can understand, and fill the gap that we feel is there for a lot of private equity firms. Just don't have technical expertise, they don't have technical due diligence within there. They're great at the numbers, and as long as the numbers look good, they normally feel all right. But I think what's increasingly happening in the marketplace is that they're realizing that they need to give good credence to the technology side of things as well. Otherwise, they find themselves in quite tricky situations. So, we've worked on a few where we've had to carve out individual sort of £100 million businesses from multi-billion pound businesses. And what becomes apparent quite quickly, if you don't have any of that technical due diligence, is that there's suddenly you haven't got a telephony system or any support or any of these things that are just fundamental to having an operational IT model, and we go in and make sure that all of that is in place so that they're then ready to run independently. We're not looking to be there long term. It will maybe a year engagement or whatever, and leave it in a better place than it was.
It's interesting, the point that evolution, because obviously it's seeing that gap, obviously, when you're servicing your clients from the original consulting model. And it's definitely, in terms of that recruitment piece, it's definitely something I have seen some consultancies go down that route, because obviously it's a clear, it makes complete sense if you begin to, from a project perspective, begin to really understand that business, see the ins and outs, and then you've got the best, you've got a network of, you said associates or contractors that can deliver, and you know that when you're screening and you've got a full understanding of whether they can, whether they're a good fit, it makes sense sometimes to have that other arm or other revenue streams to the business.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're a trusted partner, really.
No, exactly. And I mean, and ultimately the difference is, do we own the outcome or do they? And really, in that contractually, from all sorts of purposes, whether it's in or out of IR35, etc. But ultimately, for the consultancy business, we own that outcome and the delivery, and that's what we're going to be judged on and paid on. Whereas within the recruitment space, effectively the client is taking ownership of that risk and that outcome. So yeah.
What challenges do you feel that you were finding prior using the Sonovate platform or prior to registering with us?
It gave us a very flexible approach to funding, because inevitably our clients are big clients. They tend to be quite excitable about trying to delay payment if they possibly can, and whereas our associates will expect to be paid within 7 days of invoicing, and that's the general terms that we'd offer to people. So it allowed us to maintain offering those sort of competitive payment rates to our associates while insulating us from the vagaries of the payment processes of large corporates, which, as we know, even if you've got a 30 days in your MSA, doesn't always necessarily mean 30 days, and it can mean 45 days. It's very difficult to scale if you're having to manage that as well, because you just can't get over the line to actually have the cash flow in place to pay people, which is ultimately means that you can't move forward at all. So at which point you start turning business down, and that becomes a sort of ever decreasing circle at that point, and you may as well give up. So I think Sonovate, it gave us the real chance and ability to grow rapidly when the opportunities came along.
Interestingly with yourself, I think when we first spoke, there was you came to us with the idea of there being a cash flow back of a certain amount, and we originally looked to support you with that, which I think at the time I really remember saying to you that we can support you to raise that capital out of your ledger. But what our solution does, it gives you the flexibility to be able to pick and choose which clients you wanted to grow, wanted to fund and then therefore grow. And I remember the conversation we had is that because you have these other plans coming in terms of the recruitment and the venture arm of the businesses, we really went down the track of talking about growth. And I guess my question around that would be, was that something that you expected when you first thought of Sonovate? Because I know, like I said, you came to us with a sort of specific idea in mind of what we were, and have we been able to support you with that growth in a way that maybe you didn't imagine was what our service was originally?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you've been very granular about how we've been able to work together. It is on a sort of client by client basis, and that's been helpful as well, because the reality is there are fees involved when anyone does these things, and we want to minimize our fees. You want to maintain your fees, but that's the nature of business. But we've had the flexibility to make that as granular as possible so that we can maximize our use where needed, but where we don't need it, we've not been forced to take it at all. So that's been very helpful as well.
I mean, you kind of slightly answered it there, but I just want to reiterate, what's been your experience of working with Sonovate post sort of setting up and post having the immediate cash flow injection? What's it?
No, it's been great. I think it's always been responsive. I think the team are very helpful. I think we've done some quite grown-up reviews of rates and things as we've gone along, and had sensible conversations around that as well. So yeah, I think it's what we would hope for from a client service perspective, and it's gone very well.
I don't actually know the answer to this myself, but Have you had any experience of working with other lenders in the past, or was Sonovate your first sort of?
No, this is the first time really. We're completely bootstrapped to that point and self-funded. Yeah, so we've never sort of either had finance or funding from external sources. So Sonovate was our first exposure. But obviously at the time we spoke to other people as well, and Sonovate just felt like the best fit. So.
Interesting thing about you said there that you bootstrapped the business yourself. In hindsight, and obviously look, all things have worked out well, and the business has grown. And I don't know in detail, but if there's been any risk scenarios in the past. But knowing that a facility like ours exists, where maybe you wouldn't have had to bootstrap to that degree with your own capital to reach that stage, is that something that you see the value in terms of? See the value in hindsight, saying that actually the solution's there. It might be less risk averse. It might enable me to grow quicker. Are these things that have crossed your mind at all, or that you...
I think there's certainly a time and a place where it might have been, but I think for us, probably not. I think our growth has been quite organic. If you look at we've been trading 6 years, and we've sort of doubled revenue every year, which is a good number, but it's also sort of almost sustainable until you get to a certain point. And I think it gets to a certain point where, you need to put that in place. But so I think for us, probably not, but I could see where it would be with some people.
So with Sonovate funding in place, what does that mean for the future of BML?
Well, it gives us a real opportunity to grow further and to go after bigger jobs. We're even looking at some of the government frameworks now as well, because it gives us the kind of capability and backing on that gives us the credence to be able to do that. So I think not being afraid of going for some bigger stuff going forward, and fingers crossed we'll get there.
It's interesting to say that with that not being afraid to go forward and take those projects on. And you mentioned earlier about there being certain projects where you might have, maybe not you personally, but you can see how you might have to turn down business because of cash flow. And again, with the public sector, there is a real mixed bag in terms of payment terms. They go through stages of paying everyone bang on time, on the dot, and then something that creeps out and there's some sort of incentive, or not incentive, some sort of legislation comes into play or some sort of scheme to make sure that those payment times are kept to, but traditionally they do stretch. And that's even on the longer payment times as well. So I think fingers crossed for you on those contracts as well. And then my last question is, what are the aspirations for BML and your consultancy moving forward?
So it really is to keep growing across all three strands. They feed each other quite naturally, the three strands. So it's almost like a deliberate strategy, which it's become a deliberate strategy as we've talked it through and evolved it, and so it becomes a very self-fulfilling thing. Very much around building that out and expanding from there. And who knows, there'll be a BML something else as well in the future, which watch this space on that one.
Well, it's fascinating seeing that, all those businesses evolve from each other and kind of being within the same ecosystem and growing out. So I wish you all the best with that. But,
thank you.
But I really, really appreciate you running through all of that with me. It's been really interesting to watch that growth and to hear that from you as well, because obviously, we provide a solution. I know I've stayed quite close to yourself or other people within your business that I deal with on a more regular basis. And it's always very satisfying to, I had an assumption that things were going well, and I could see obviously in terms of your growth that they are. But it's always really good to hear that, the sort of that original discovery phase where we really looked into what you wanted to achieve and supporting you with that and kind of getting it right really to enable that growth. So I'm glad to hear it's all going well, and hopefully it continues to do so.
Great, thank you.